The email came while I was standing under the soft orange lights of a street vendor's cart in Marrakech. I just finished bargaining for a hand-woven shawl, something to bring back for his mother, who always said I never thought of her. I remember thinking, maybe this one will shut her up. And then my phone buzzed. I thought it was him. A goodnight text. Maybe a photo of our cat curled up on his chest. Instead, it was from our attorney. Subject line, final notice of divorce filing, signed and executed. I didn't open it right away. I just stared. The air around me went quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. Even the smell of cumin and sweet mint tea seemed to vanish. My hands started trembling before my mind caught up. I opened the email. It was short. Legal, too clean for what we had built, too cold for the man I thought I married. There was a sentence halfway down, almost casually placed. All shared assets have been transferred per agreement. What agreement? What assets? And then right there at the bottom he'd written, didn't want to ruin your trip, figured this was the cleanest way. No signature, just his name typed out in bold. Michael Tanner. Like I was just another business transaction. I didn't cry, not then. I stood there with the shawl still clutched in my hands, blinking like I'd just been slapped in the middle of a crowded room. Because I had been. Just not physically. A young vendor looked at me, smiled gently, and asked, Madame, c'est bon? And I nodded. Because what else do you do when your entire life is shredded by a man you trusted? While you're 6,000 miles away from home, I walked back to the hotel alone. No dinner, no calls, just the sound of my sandals on cobblestone and the weight of 14 years pressing into my chest like wet concrete. When I got back to my room, I opened the safe. The passports were still there. My wedding ring wasn't. We had matching rings. Simple gold bands we'd exchanged on a rainy Tuesday in a courthouse downtown because he said he couldn't wait. I left mine in the safe that morning before heading out. Now it was gone. He'd known exactly what day I'd be out, exactly where I'd be. He must have called the hotel, had them open the safe, told them I'd authorized it. Maybe even faked a signature. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone still glowing in my hand, and stared at my reflection in the black screen. He had taken everything. Our house, our joint savings, even the damn cat. And all I could think was, why now? Why not face me? Why not wait till I got back? And then it hit me, because he didn't want a confrontation, because deep down Michael Tanner knew he was robbing me, and still, he thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd just return home, humiliated and broke, and disappear into the fog like some sad cliché of a dumped wife. But what he forgot was that I was never the quiet one. And I wasn't going home. Not yet. We met in a bookstore, not the kind with bright fluorescent lights and gift cards by the register. No, this one smelled like old paper and rainy Saturdays. The kind of place where silence wasn't awkward, it was sacred. Michael was leaning against a shelf marked Modern History, flipping through a book about failed empires. I made some offhand comment about how all empires fall eventually, and he looked up, smiled, and said, "Then I guess we better enjoy the rise." It was a line. I knew that. But something about the way he said it made me believe he meant it. We spent 3 hours sitting on the hardwood floor between shelves, talking about everything and nothing. He told me he was a consultant, tech operations for startups, traveled a lot. I told him I ran a nonprofit that helped refugee women navigate immigration systems. We joked that we'd never see each other again. We saw each other the next day, and the next, and the next. He proposed after only 6 months, in a park under a street lamp that buzzed like it was holding its breath. No ring, just a promise. "I don't want to do life without you," he'd whispered. And I believed him. We eloped, no fanfare, just a courthouse, 2 witnesses, and a $35 filing fee. He said it felt more us. At the time I thought that meant simple, genuine. Now I wonder if it meant easy to undo. We moved into a loft in the city. He insisted we combine our finances. "It's all ours now," he said, drawing circles around our names on the paperwork. I didn't even flinch. I let my nonprofit savings roll into the joint account. Even sold my old condo, one I bought on my own when I was 29, because he said we should start fresh. And when I look back now, I realize that was the first piece of myself I quietly gave away. Not because I had to, but because I thought that's what love looked like. I remember the first time I noticed something had shifted. It was subtle, barely more than a ripple. Michael started checking his phone during dinner. Not like he used to, laughing at memes or sharing headlines. This was furtive, quiet. Screen tilted away, thumb tapping faster than usual. When I asked who he was texting, he'd chuckle and say, "Clients. You know how it is." And I'd nod, like I understood. Because I did, or I wanted to. Then came the missed flights. The last-minute work trips that somehow didn't show up on his calendar. The hotel receipts for cities he never mentioned. He always had an answer. Always a reason. And I always let it go. Because I loved him. And when you love someone, you find ways to explain away the parts that don't make sense. I told myself he was stressed. That startups were unpredictable. That I was being paranoid. But even then, I started to shrink around him. I'd stop mid-sentence when he looked at his phone. Wait for him to finish typing before I dared speak again. Laugh a little softer when he didn't laugh back. I stopped bringing up my work, my non-profit. He said it was emotionally draining to hear about other people's struggles after a long day. So I made my world quieter, smaller. For him. One night, I was folding laundry on the couch. His socks, his shirts, the same polo he wore to that tech expo in Miami. And he walked in, dropped his bag, and said, "I don't know why you insist on doing this yourself. We can hire someone." I looked at him, held a pair of his boxers in one hand and a worn t-shirt in the other, and smiled. "Because this makes me feel close to you," I said. He didn't answer, just walked past me and opened a beer. That was the moment I realized he didn't want closeness. He wanted convenience. He didn't marry me because I inspired him. He married me because I was reliable. The kind of woman who paid bills on time, who remembered his mother's birthday, who bought groceries and folded socks and made his life easier. And slowly, I stopped being a partner. I became background noise. Even then, I didn't leave. Because love doesn't just die. It doesn't vanish in a single moment. It erodes. Inches at a time. So quietly you don't even realize you're drowning until you're already underwater. But looking back now, I see it so clearly. The man who held my hand in that bookstore, he disappeared years ago. And the man who took his place, he was already planning his escape. Long before I stepped on that plane. The thing about betrayal is, it rarely announces itself. It creeps in like a draft from a cracked window. You don't feel it right away. You just know something's off. A week after the email, I flew back to the States. The apartment was empty, his things gone, but not neatly. Drawers half open, one shoe missing from every pair. It was like he wanted it to feel chaotic, like he wanted to leave me in a room that still smelled like him, but no longer belonged to me. I sat on the floor of the closet for over an hour, not crying, just frozen. And then I got up, and I did the thing I'd done 1,000 times in my work with refugees. I started collecting documents. At first, I was just trying to understand why he'd done it, how he could have moved money without me knowing. I pulled every bank statement from the last 18 months, cross-checked every wire, every transfer, called the banks, checked the timestamps. That's when I saw it. 4 months before our anniversary trip, Michael had opened a new account in his name only. Transferred small amounts, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. Always on days when he knew I was distracted. Days I had donor meetings or was visiting my sister in Vermont. He'd been planning this for over a year. And suddenly, everything clicked. The hotel in Denver he said was for a client meeting. The florist charge in New Orleans. The Lyft ride from Morgan's apartment. I looked at the receipts like pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know I was solving. And at the center of it, a name I didn't recognize. L. Kavanaugh. It kept showing up. Once on a dinner receipt from the Grove. Again on a florist's order, 12 white tulips, her favorite, apparently. And then on a lease agreement. For a luxury condo, signed by Michael Tanner and Leah Kavanaugh. I printed the lease and stared at it like it would explain something. It didn't. It just confirmed what I already knew. There was another woman. There had been for months, maybe longer. I looked her up. Of course I did. LinkedIn, Instagram, Venmo, the usual places people leave breadcrumbs. She was younger, marketing executive, liked yoga retreats and matcha smoothies and captioning photos with quotes like "soft is strong." And the worst part? She looked kind, not sexy, not trashy, not cartoonish like some affair stereotype. Just like someone you'd trust at a dinner table. Like someone who'd smile at you while holding your child. It made me feel sick. Because I wasn't dealing with some stranger in a hotel bar. I was dealing with a woman he'd built a parallel life with, and a man who'd lied to my face while packing his second toothbrush. I didn't confront him. Not then. I didn't send an email, didn't call, didn't scream or cry or smash dishes. Instead, I bought a notebook. Just a plain, spiral-bound one from the corner drugstore, and I started writing things down. Every date, every receipt, every late night, every odd comment, every charge that didn't match a trip I knew about. I logged into our shared cloud storage. I knew he was careless with digital folders, and I was right. There were screenshots, flight confirmations, even a note labeled Plan B if she finds out. Inside was a list. Call Morgan to switch lawyer. Move everything into Leah's name. Lock out of joint accounts. Block number. No contact at all. Control the narrative. She was unstable. Unstable. That word sat in my chest like a brick. It was one thing to lie, one thing to cheat, but to preemptively rewrite me as crazy? That wasn't just betrayal. That was war. And I realized in that moment, he didn't just leave me, he wanted to erase me. So I made a new list, not to beg, not to win him back, but to dismantle every single step he thought he'd taken ahead of me. And I didn't say a word. Not to my friends, not to my sister, not even to my therapist. I just smiled politely, nodded through the sympathy, said I'm taking time to heal. But the truth? I was watching, listening, gathering. Because if Michael thought he was 3 steps ahead, he clearly never saw the moment I started keeping score. The first call I made was to Claudia. She was the accountant at my nonprofit, the kind of woman who never missed a decimal, who balanced numbers like they were sacred. She also happened to be the person I trusted most outside my blood. I told her, plainly, I need you to help me find everything he thinks I don't know. She didn't ask questions, just said, give me 3 days. While she dug through the tangled mess of Michael's quiet financial betrayal, I made my own list. Not just what he'd taken, but what he'd forgotten. For starters, he left our LLC filing in both our names. The tech startup he once helped me register, back when he thought it would make him look like the supportive husband of a female founder. He never thought I'd actually use it. But I did. After our honeymoon, I'd filed every quarterly return, updated every tax record. He ignored all of it, called it too small to matter. But now that small company was the legal holder of 2 trademarks and a licensing agreement I'd quietly negotiated 6 months earlier. One that would soon be used in a public educational campaign, one with federal funding. And his name? Nowhere on it. Because I'd filed a motion to dissolve the partnership 2 months before our trip. He hadn't noticed. Didn't even open the email. While Michael was planning his little escape, I had already started preparing mine. Not because I expected betrayal, but because I'd started to feel invisible, and I needed something that belonged to me again. I never imagined it would become the very thing that would save me. And Claudia? She didn't disappoint. 3 days later, she handed me a USB drive. Everything he moved, she said, everything he touched, it's all here. Transfers to Leah's account, offshore holdings, even a private crypto wallet he thought no one could trace. But what Michael didn't know was that 3 of those transfers had been made during our marriage from a joint account into an account only in his name, which meant, legally, community property theft. And under our state's laws, that was enough for civil action, and possibly criminal. I brought the USB to Ellen, my lawyer. She was sharp, retired twice, and didn't believe in second chances, especially not for men who underestimated women in flats and cardigans. She clicked through the folders, nodded once, and said, we're not just getting your money back, we're going to bury him with paperwork. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I wanted clarity. I wanted peace. But most of all, I wanted him to see me again. Even if it was just for a moment. Even if it was in the reflection of the fire he thought he'd lit beneath me. Because that's the part he never understood. He didn't burn me down. He lit me up. 2 weeks later, I sent him an email. Short, precise. I used his tone, his formatting, his punctuation. Since you preferred to finalize things by email, I'll extend the same courtesy. I've accepted your divorce. I'm also moving forward with legal action regarding misappropriated funds and breach of fiduciary duty. Expect contact from my attorney. P.S. You left your wedding ring. It's with the concierge. And then I waited. Not for him to reply, he wouldn't. Michael was a man who only engaged when he thought he had control. So I took that from him too. I waited until the launch gala for my nonprofit's new campaign, Invisible No More. It was hosted at the city's cultural center. Elegant, grand, packed with donors, community leaders, and press. And Michael, he showed up. I wasn't surprised. His name had been on the early guest list, back when he was still husband of the executive director. He probably thought I'd forgotten, or maybe he wanted to remind me that he still had the power to walk into any room and tilt it in his favor. He came in with Leah on his arm. She wore a champagne dress. He wore the smirk of a man who thought this was his stage. But this time, I wasn't on the sidelines. Midway through the night, I stepped onto the stage. No mic check, no script, just me, in a midnight blue suit and heels I bought for myself, 3 days after he left. I spoke softly. I told the crowd about the power of being underestimated, about how some women are most dangerous when they're quiet, about what it means to be made invisible in your own life and how you find your way back. And then I said, this campaign was built on real stories, stories of women who were discarded, but also of women who refused to stay discarded. I paused, met his eyes. Some of those women, they were told by people they trusted that they'd never rebuild, but they did. And they built something better. I didn't say his name, I didn't need to. The next day, our campaign video launched. It featured voices from dozens of survivors. But the final words? Mine. You can take everything from a woman, but if she still has her voice, she's not done. Michael called 3 days later. He left a voicemail. He sounded small, said he didn't know the video would go viral, that Leah had asked him to clarify things between us, that maybe we could talk things through off the record. I didn't call back. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to Ellen. We filed the civil suit the next morning, and as I walked into her office, with coffee in one hand and my case binder in the other, she looked up and said, "This is gonna sting him worse than any scandal. You didn't just get even. You got ahead." And she was right. Because Michael thought he'd left me broken in a hotel room overseas. But he didn't realize I'd already started walking toward the microphone. The court date came faster than expected. Michael didn't show. His lawyer did, some man in an expensive suit who looked annoyed to be there. Ellen leaned over to me and whispered, "That's a good sign. Arrogant attorneys only show up alone when they think they've already won." But this wasn't about who had the better suit. It was about facts. And Ellen, she brought receipts, literally, emails, wire logs, screenshots. Photos of the condo he signed with Leah while he was still married to me. A copy of the document he'd tried to delete from our cloud, the one that mapped out his exit plan in bullet points like I was some inconvenience he just needed to time right. The judge listened. Didn't speak much, didn't blink often. And when it was over, he looked down at his notes, looked back up at Michael's attorney, and said, "You should advise your client to settle. If not, I'll be forced to move forward with criminal recommendations." That's when it shifted. That's when they started to flinch. Settlement meetings were scheduled. But this time, I didn't show up alone. Claudia came. Ellen came. Even our board chair came, because Michael had once sat in on meetings pretending to be a donor liaison. She wanted to clarify he had never been employed by us, nor entitled to speak on behalf of the foundation. Leah didn't come. According to what Claudia heard through a mutual friend, she'd moved out. 3 weeks after the gala. Apparently, she'd found the same list I had, the one labeled Plan B. She didn't like being part of someone's escape route either. Funny how betrayal doesn't feel so smart when it's pointed in your direction. At the final meeting, Michael walked in alone. No smirk, no swagger. He looked tired. Older, the kind of man who realized too late that everything he built was made out of matchsticks. He sat across from me and stared at the table for a long time. Didn't say a word. Didn't look me in the eye. And I didn't offer him grace. Because grace is for the grieving, not for the ones who set the fire and then cried about the smoke. I signed the agreement with a pen Ellen had brought me. Black lacquer, engraved with the words, "Never again invisible." When it was done, I stood, gathered my things and left the room. No goodbye, no parting shot. Just the sound of my heels on marble and a woman who no longer had anything left to lose, because she'd already reclaimed it all. The headlines came a week later. Not big, not splashy, just enough to sting. Nonprofit leaders X under investigation for marital fraud and asset manipulation. A subheading quoted the judge directly, a clear breach of fiduciary trust with potential for civil and criminal liability. It was enough to make investors nervous. Turns out Michael had been trying to pitch a new tech consultancy, backed by the same startup money he stole from me. Now the brand was toxic. His LinkedIn disappeared. So did his website. And soon after, his apartment lease was listed on Zillow. Leah never spoke to me, but someone forwarded me a now deleted Instagram post. A photo of her suitcase, half-zipped. The caption said, "Lesson learned. If he'll lie to her, he'll lie to you." No tags, no names, just enough. And honestly, I didn't need more than that. The money came back slowly. Not all of it, of course. Some of it was tied up in taxes, penalties, 1,000 layers of bureaucracy. But I didn't care. What mattered was the precedent. The court order. The paper trail that said this happened. And it was not okay. People noticed. Women I'd never met reached out. Some who had been through the same thing. Some who were still in it. One wrote, "I thought I was crazy. Then I watched your story. Now I'm documenting everything." And that meant more to me than any dollar figure ever could. Michael tried to reach out again. An email this time. "I never meant to hurt you. I just felt trapped. I didn't know how to leave." It wasn't an apology. It was a soft rewrite of history. The kind men like him think they're entitled to when consequences start knocking. I didn't reply. I archived it, then flagged it for Ellen, just in case. And that was the last time I ever saw his name in my inbox. The world didn't explode. No fireworks, no champagne, just silence. But it wasn't the cold, hollow kind I felt in that hotel room in Marrakech. This was a different kind of quiet, the kind that settles in after a storm, the kind you earn. Because in the end, he didn't leave me with nothing. He left me with a clean slate. And I learned how to build from dust. Some mornings, I still wake up early. Not from worry, not from anxiety, just quiet. The kind of quiet that wraps around you like a soft shawl. The kind that says, "You're safe now. You don't have to defend yourself anymore." I get up, make coffee, black, no sugar. It used to be his way, now it's mine. I don't check my phone first thing. There's no one to disappoint me anymore before 9 a.m. I light a candle by the window. It's sandalwood. I used to hate it, but lately, it makes the room feel grounded. There's a small notebook on the table, not the one I used to track his lies, a new one. This one holds grocery lists, book titles I want to read, dreams I used to tuck away between laundry loads and dinner prep, little things that belong only to me. I walk to work most days now. It's a small office on the second floor of a co-op building. No elevator, just old stairs that creak when it rains. But I love that place. The women I work with call it the rebuild room, because everyone who steps in is building something, a business, a life, a new version of themselves. I help with legal literacy now, teaching women how to spot the fine print in contracts and in people. Some days they cry. Some days we just sit in silence with tea and a notepad between us. But every day, we remind each other that survival isn't the goal. Freedom is, and dignity, and clarity. And waking up one morning and realizing you no longer rehearse conversations with ghosts. There's no grand romance in my life right now. And strangely, that feels okay. I thought I'd feel lonely, but I don't. Not in the way I used to. Loneliness back then meant being in a room with someone who pretended not to see me. Now it's just me, and I see everything. Last weekend, I took a trip by myself. No itinerary, no one waiting on the other side. Just me, a canvas tote, and a playlist full of songs I forgot I loved. I booked a room at a seaside inn, the kind with peeling paint, homemade scones, and windows that don't quite close all the way. Perfect, really. I walked along the shore that evening, shoes in one hand, cold sand curling beneath my toes. The tide came in slow, gentle, like forgiveness. Not for him, for me, for the girl who gave too much, for the woman who stayed too long, for the silence I swallowed just to keep the peace. I didn't need revenge. I needed restoration. And this quiet walk on a beach with no one to impress, felt more powerful than any courtroom victory. There's something sacred about starting over when no one is watching. No applause, no audience. Just the steady rhythm of your own heart learning to trust again. And every time I think I've reached the end of healing, another layer peels back. Another truth gets rewritten. I don't miss the life I had. I miss who I thought I was in it. But now, I know better. I'm not someone's wife, or someone's burden, or someone's second option. I'm not what I lost. I'm what I kept. To the women watching this, the ones quietly unraveling behind perfect smiles, the ones who still flinch when the phone rings after 10 p.m., the ones tracing the edges of old wounds, hoping they'll finally close, I see you. You are not invisible. You are not crazy. You are not behind. You are becoming. And if no one has told you lately, you don't need to be rescued. You just need to be remembered. So light the candle, write the list, take the walk, let the silence soften you. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just have to return to yourself. And if this story reminded you of your own, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Or maybe, send this to someone who needs it today. And if you ever want to hear more stories that remind you healing is possible, feel free to subscribe, because we don't always get the ending we planned, but sometimes we get the one we needed.